Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Play Civilization 6 Deity. This is episode 2 with our Australia attempt. And in the first episode, we had a lot of good milestones happen. We were able to establish a really strong presence on a second continent, which in the mid to late game, you have a lot of options for bonuses for cities that were founded on other continents. Specifically, diplomatic policy card slot that you have plus 25% gold to cities on other continents. I think there's a way to get a bonus to growth on cities from other continents. It might also be a policy card slot. And so that presence alone has been significant. It hasn't been without struggle. You can see that there's a free city currently that we are in the process of converting back to our civilization. If you remember, we had to take over a city-state, Geneva, in order to get the necessary loyalty to get Rockhampton back, which was a city that was taken from us by Sulu. In one turn, they declared a surprise war, and then in one turn took that city. There was really nothing we could do. I think there were even walls there. But we're taking it back not through conquest. Our conquest efforts exist largely navally, and that's going to be the big story of the next several turns, is can we find a way to make our navy presence strong enough to overcome the Sulu. The Sulu is the team to beat. Now you see that we still are at war because of the emergency declared. We're still at war with Spain and Mapuche, in consequence of our having taken Geneva. We didn't really have a choice if we wanted to get Rockhampton swayed back in our favor through loyalty. And their efforts, while potential to be scary, have not been more than just 3 or fewer units at a time in certain cities. I think it's Melbourne is the name of the city that is closest to Spain that saw some troops coming up on them, but we're going to find a way to repel them pretty easily. We are only recently having researched square rigging, and now you can see we are built. Oh, it's Adelaide is the city I was talking about. And we just got that frigate up in Adelaide. It now has ranged capability in the city. It's kind of interesting. We're using a naval unit in order to protect our land forces, but it's super effective. The frigate has a nice range strength of, I think, 55. And so these land units coming by Spain are not coming in high enough number for us to be worried. Additionally, the ref terrain in Adelaide is going to serve as a big defensive tool as well, because they just can't approach very quickly at all. Plus, there's a city-state nearby that's going to limit their mobility. So on all the defensive concerns with our war against the non-Sulu nations do not seem to be a concern. They're not nearly close to Geneva enough for us to lose the emergency, let alone lose a city elsewhere in consequence of their decision to declare war. Sulu, on the other hand, his land forces are terribly strong. We see some of them approaching the Australian city south of Rockhampton, whose name is difficult for me to pronounce. It's actually a Sulu city name. But the pronunciation of it is escaping me right now. But it's the one that's settled right on that Lake Natural Wonder. That city, yeah, you see there are cavalry approaching that city. Cavalry. That's actually a military unit that is farther along the civic tree than frigates. And frigates is our most advanced unit, of course, on the other side of the tree. It's along the top of the civic tree because it's a naval unit. So a naval unit will never come, a frigate won't really come head to head with a cavalry unit. I mean, frigates can shoot at cavalry units. But the point is, if we were trying to use military units that were to outclass cavalry units, we'd be in some tough luck. But fortunately, frigates, whether or not they're stronger than cavalry units, doesn't really matter because they're naval units and they don't really have to fight the cavalry units. They just have to bombard the cities enough times until they can take the cities. That's hopefully what's going to happen with Mohenjo-Daro here. So you can see we just are getting our first frigate within range. We're actually going to wait one more turn before we actually get within shooting range of Mohenjo-Daro, because Mohenjo-Daro can shoot back. And interestingly, Mohenjo-Daro is actually a former city-state. And so if you remember Australia having that bonus of the 10 turns following the liberation of a city, you get a plus 100% production bonus to all of your cities. That is going to be huge. Unfortunately, we were not able to rescue Mohenjo-Daro, like 30 turns ago when that emergency was offered to us about liberating Mohenjo-Daro, but that's okay. You don't need to have an emergency to make it worth it to liberate a city. We won't really be able to take the city outright because of loyalty reasons, and in fact, that's going to play a big role in the next several turns, is deciding what the loyalty pressures are going to allow us, and more importantly, not allow us to do with this war on Sulu. You see we have frigates coming at a relatively comfortable rate now. Our single archer, I can't believe we only have archers, but because we've chosen to go so navy heavy, we have not yet unlocked machinery in order to upgrade that archer into a crossbowman. But that single archer is doing well enough defending that city. A cute little optimization here. We were able to move our frigates out of range of Mohenjo-Daro on that turn because there was a barbarian privateer that was approaching our naval units, and we did need to deal with it quickly, and instead of dealing with it just by turning around and shooting it, we actually left the shooting range of the city that we were attacking. Take one turn off of shooting at Mohenjo-Daro's walls in order to get our frigates out of range, shoot the privateer, and they'll be able to jump back into range and start shooting at Mohenjo-Daro again next turn. We did send some caravels back within the range of Mohenjo-Daro, but those caravels have enough life to just let a city take one shot at them for now. The frigates are the ones whose life we want to protect because they are the ones who will be doing damage to the city walls over enough turns to try and hopefully capture that city. Again, that archer and then the city attacks just shooting at these cavalrymen who are just really suboptimally placed around the on the attack around our cities that we need to defend. The AI just not doing a good job with their land units. You can see there is actually a biplane. Holy cow, there is an airplane in Mohenjo-Daro, which is a little bit unusual because I think that you would have to go across the top of the tree in order to get flight. You have to get Navy before you can get flight, I believe. And if you have gotten Navy, I'm surprised we haven't seen any Sulu naval units, I guess, and considering we're showing such a naval force against one of their cities. That cavalryman doesn't quite die. The archer's just not strong. The city attack does decent damage, but it wasn't enough combined with the archer to finish off that one cavalryman. But the city's defenses are completely safe. One cavalryman at a time is not going to cut it, especially when he has one in one city and another in another city. If you concentrate all the cavalry that we've seen and shot at in the same city, approaching at the same time, we might be in trouble. You can see that city, Mbandiguske, is down to like half of its walls left, but and that's been with the Sulu playing outrageously suboptimally. So I guess we count our lucky stars that the AI is bad at war, though maybe they're just kind of off kilter because we are attacking with our navy in another part of their empire. You can see there's actually a cavalry unit in Mohenjo-Daro, two of them there, desperately thinking that they might be able to defend the city. And it's not futile. You get a bonus to your city defenses by having a stronger unit garrisoned inside of it. And so it's not like they're wasting that cavalry unit. Well, the one that's inside the city, it's not like they're wasting it. There's one just chilling outside the city that can't do anything against our naval units. That one is just literally wasted. We're not even going to waste our time shooting at it. Maybe after we take Mohenjo-Daro, we'll take advantage of the fact that it's sitting outside the city and shoot at it. Also because we don't want Mohenjo-Daro to get taken back. Though if we liberate it, it'll become a city-state, which I think will put walls up immediately upon being liberated. And so it should be safe from a single cavalry unit. We have some barbarians annoying us over in Hobart, but that's not a terribly big deal. Just having walls and that city is going to be enough. Shoot back. We're exploring a little bit more with this caravel, or looping around the southern end. We'd explored this little trench before, but I think it's going to want to actually loop around through the bottom of the ice caps this time around the Mapuche region, get open borders with them if we don't have it already, so they can join back up with the naval forces on the Sulu side of that continent, hopefully maybe at least prove to be a nuisance to the Sulu by pillaging some tiles that are useful. Caravels are just past the point where they're actually going to be useful in attacking a city. You saw we squeaked by in the previous episode with capturing Geneva with just caravels, but that time is over. It is remarkable that there's even a time in which that can be done. By the time you research caravels, your opponent's city defenses have usually advanced to the point where they'll deal enough damage to melee naval units anyway that just an army of caravels might not cut it. So we're lucky we found that very narrow window to have even taken a city with caravels, and now we're just going to have to rely on frigates. So this caravel, although it will be nice for it to link up with our forces attacking the Sulu on this side of the continent, it's mostly going to be useful to just pester by pillaging and maybe spying out some maybe incoming naval units, give us some nice intel. We'll want to steer clear enough of the mainland to not get shot at by the Sulu, but that's okay. It'll still be able to see any naval units coming in. Managing some trade routes, managing our builder. This builder has been trying to get out of the city and actually do something in useful to help upgrade the tiles, but then another Sulu unit shows up and prevents us from meaningfully upgrading the city. We have taken Mohenjo-Daro. We're going to look at the options now. Just make sure we can't keep it. The 100% production boost is obviously nice for liberating a city, but generally, just having a free city is probably better than a 10-turn 100% production bonus. You see we mouse over Raised City. I was not sure, actually, upon the attacking of this city that it was a city-state at the time. Upon seeing the option to liberate, that really changed the benefit of attacking Mohenjo-Daro first, was the option to liberate it. And at this point, I actually usually like to comment on these as if they're happening in real time with us, even though the fact that it's sped up, obviously, I'm commenting on this in retrospect. I comment on it typically as if it's unfolding immediately. But there is one retrospective comment that we need to make, and that's the error of loyalty estimation that one happened when we attacked Mohenjo-Daro. We were actually bailed out by the fact that Mohenjo-Daro was a city-state that we get to liberate, and that's actually just as useful as taking a 2-population city without any significant luxuries or bonuses or terrain that makes it critical. But we do not get bailed out in our next decision, and so this is the little retrospective comment that it's important for us to understand as we think about the way the rest of this run is going to pan out. Is we choose to attack the Sulu somewhere that we should not. And you can see we're already moving in. Ulundi is their capital. At the time of this attack, I do not realize that Ulundi is the capital of the Sulu. Honestly, there was probably a hope in my mind that we would be able to keep the city and scrap together some loyalty bonuses that would allow us to have a strong city over in the Sulu Empire. But being relatively new to the Rise and Fall expansion mechanics, I really underestimate the difficulty of loyalty pressure so deep into the enemy territory. You really have to take the cities like a domino effect, which I think is neat and a really polished aspect of the Rise and Fall expansion, but it's going to lead to our downfall in the immediate future. Whether or not costs us the run will be very close, and so we will not do too much more retrospective commentary besides just acknowledging that this attack of Ulunde is folly. Now, I did mention that while my initial plan was to try and scrap together a loyalty effort to get Ulunde for ourselves, and not understanding that won't be possible, there is typically a good backup to that. And you see, it's actually, I mentioned just briefly, I moused over the Raised City option in Mohenjo-Daro, which would have been a fine option. If the Sulu is the team to beat, it's not necessarily crucial to take cities from them, though obviously that momentum is very helpful, and we will need to find some other momentum swings if we don't get to take cities. But if you can't take cities, then burning them to the ground if they are powerful cities of the number one civilization in your particular world is often good enough. The miscalculation, or just the misunderstanding, or the unfortunate thing about this mistake, is that the mistake does not let us fall back on burning Ulunde to the ground because it is the capital of the Sulu, and that you can't raise capitals to the ground. And so when we take it, we're going to have to deal with that reality. You can see it was actually a little bit frightening. So on top of this fighter, holy cow, if you thought the biplane in Mohenjo-Daro was scary, there is a fighter defending Ulunde. The ability to take Ulunde is actually not even clear from this point. I've already spoiled you that we do manage to take the city, but holy cow, it is going to be close. That fighter is going to do some work. We can try and put some caravels in the way to slow down the rate at which our frigates get blasted away out of the ability to take down the Ulunde walls, but we don't have an infinite number of caravel, and their numbers are dwindling fast with a fighter able to attack them each turn. The other shocking thing to notice about our being outmatched by the Sulu technology is approaching the city south of Rockhampton, again, whose name is difficult to pronounce. There was an AT crew, anti-tank crew, that's quite far along the technology tree in the land units arena. We still had an archer shooting at, as well as our city attack. It seems to have scampered off pretty quickly, which is we're definitely thankful for, in consequence of the fact that city's walls are still at half strength. Yeah, here come down the walls of Lunde, which is nice. And now it does look like we're going to take the city. We've got 4 frigates, 2 caravel, and an ironclad. That fighter is still going to be a nuisance, but with the city down to about 80% health, we'll get there. Transfer this Great Admiral into a city that's going to be closer to the fighting. Just because why not? Get all your Great Admirals over there. Their retire bonuses are sometimes useful, but these particular ones, we've decided to just move them into the fight. Get some nice promotions on our frigates. Deciding whether or not that frigate should attack, it's a little bit weak. Hopefully it doesn't die to the fighter, even if it does. Hopefully our other 3 frigates are enough to take Ulunde. We'll see if that frigate survives. It does not. Not good. 3 frigates left in a dream. Ulunde down to about half health. It does recover 20 health per turn. There's no way to siege the city with just these few naval units. Specifically ranged naval units. Just get some amenity bonuses in our cities. You can see that all of our cities actually need amenities. So we're going to take, as far as the development of our cities go, we're going to slow down the military production because it looks like we have just enough naval units to capture Ulunde. And if we didn't, spending 9 turns to build a frigate in a city that's several turns away from traveling over to help the war effort. Anyway, geez, another frigate lost. It's going to be close. It's going to be close. Ulunde. So now we're down to 3 frigates, a caravel, and an ironclad. And yeah, we'll get Ulunde. But yeah, producing units in any of our other cities is not helpful at this point, since the capture of Ulunde is winding down, and we don't necessarily have the momentum to take another city soon. So our other cities are free to focus on development things, which the number 1 development issue we need to resolve right now is, in fact, amenities. Our amenities are low, so we can build those arenas, those districts, the circus districts, the entertainment complexes. That's what they're called. You see we're going to work on building one right there. That'll help with loyalty issues if they become a problem as well, though they're not enough to help loyalty issues over here in Ulunde, which we're about to discover. So Ulunde is ours, and here comes an unfortunate realization that we cannot do anything about the loyalty pressure of Ulunde. We're currently at 3 times speed, which is a little bit slower than episode 1. I think this is a better pacing for these episodes, though at this point I am going to skip a little bit of content because the next moments of gameplay are really this is a learning episode, and hopefully you're watching this because you want to learn with me. You're not here to watch an expert at work. I am not the most practiced Civilization player, but I am learning from my mistakes, and I hope you learn from my mistakes as well. And this mistake just happens to take the next couple minutes. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit and continue to watch about what our plan is. So it turns out we decide that the most effective way to deal with an impossible loyalty recovery is to trade it back to the Sulu. So we're going to skip ahead to right here where you can see Ulunde is already back in the Sulu hands. There was an option to, and we've ended the war. So basically we leveraged their capital, giving their capital back to them, which we weren't going to be able to hold onto anyway because of loyalty reasons. But we leveraged that offer, hey, you can have your capital back, in order to potentially get a sweeter deal out of their peace negotiations. It is possible that they would have given us anything we wanted in order to obtain peace anyway, and they did pretty much give us everything they had. We took a handful of great works from them, all of their gold, some luxuries that they had only single copies of, which the A are usually slow to part with. We just cleaned them out. It may be that the Sulu would have given us such generous offers regardless of whether or not we threw in their capital as an option, but because we couldn't hold on to the capital, we didn't lose too much by giving it back to them. We can see here that since in the last several turns we have decided not to focus on more naval units, but instead try and catch up on the development of our cities, we've actually done so really efficiently. The high production nature of our cities is leading them to not have a ton of useful things to work on. Their populations have been capped enough that we don't have any new districts to build, and so they're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel of the most useful things to build. We're building some builders in our cities. Builders are good to build. I probably don't prioritize them enough, but it is nice to be told you need to build builders when all of your building and district options have been exhausted. So these builders are going to put in some work, just improve the cities in minor ways. A few more mine bonuses here, maybe a pasture or a farm there. And once again, we're laboring over what the best decision is to build. We're going to build a settler, and this is actually going to be crucial because making peace with the Sulu at this point needs to have the acknowledgement that it cannot be long-term. The Sulu are way too far ahead. We did not capture a city from them that we secured for ourselves. We did remove the power of Mohenjo-Daro from them and returned it to being a city-state. But that was such a small fraction of the Sulu lead right now that we have an understanding that we need to take some cities from them, or actually be able to burn some of their cities to ground if we are to stop their momentum. It's nice that we slowed them down in causing them, in fact, they declared war on us, but after they declared war on us, they did lose a lot of efficiency in the number of units that they were probably dedicating time to creating and then spreading out in these weird ways, as you saw. So that's good for us that they mismanaged their cavalry. But the fact that they were spending turns building cavalry at all definitely slowed down their lead. But with this number of cities and this much science ahead of us, as evidenced by the fact that they have cavalry and AT crew and fighters, means that we need to find a way to cheese some more progress out of them. It might not be for several turns, though, because our frigates are going to really fall in comparison to their air force. While their land superiority will not be able to stop our navy, their air force will. And so our navy needs to turn into an anti-air force navy. And the only way to do that is to make it to steel. And so over the next several turns, there's going to be a realization that, one, we need to go back to war with Sulu quite some time from now in order to have battleships upgraded. And two, we're going to need to have a staging point for these frigates to turn into the next era of units, battleships that will be able to hold their own against Air Force units a little bit better. And so this creating of a settler in our capital is motivated not just by having run out of all a large number of useful things to build. We just got our machinery, by the way. This archer can finally be upgraded to a crossbow. We probably won't do it now. We'll probably sit on that one. Maybe we'll wait until we have a policy for upgrading units, because we know we're going to want to upgrade all of those frigates into battleships. But maybe we'll just wait until it seems like it's going to be critical for that archer to be upgraded to a crossbowman. But no reason to spend the gold doing it now. We are sitting on a sizable amount of gold. Another minor mistake might be choosing to not finding as something useful to spend the gold on immediately. 2,000, 3,000 plus gold in our treasury, unless you're accumulating like 1,000 gold per turn, means that you've had several turns of purchasing power that you have not used sooner. to snowball your advantage. One of the big realities of civilization is that doing things sooner that accumulate per turn advantages is crucial. Anything that's a per turn advantage, which is any building, any district that has base adjacency, is crucial. And things that have just immediate, traders is another example, builders is another example, settlers is another example. Whereas great people are not always that way. A lot of great people are single-use advantages, and obviously you are racing against great people with other civilizations, but great people are something that it's okay. Sometimes you want the next era of great people anyway. It's like, oh, this one's not as good. So there are some things in Civilization 6. This is kind of a meta discussion. Right now we're just cleaning up some efficiency things. As we unlock new resources, we're able to, or unlock new technologies, we're able to build new meaningful buildings, namely the seaport. That's probably worth pausing and pointing out. The seaport is huge here. These civic developments aren't insane. Oh, actually, there's the policy card I was talking about. Plus 25% production and plus 25% gold and plus some percent production for cities that are not on your original continent. It's a huge reason to have expanded the way we did in the first several turns of the game. But yeah, as far as, so I was going to say the civic developments aren't super important, but that one was a meaningful one. Most of the other policy cards, though, will not be the most meaningful. The one that gives harbor adjacency bonus is plus the commercial hub adjacency bonus is nice. But really really the technology tree is the one that's going to unlock our ability to do more powerful things. And so the seaports are the number one way that we're doing that. These units that we're developing are really just kind of in the way between us and getting steel. So that's what we're doing right now. We're just kind of biding our time until we can get the steel, and then we're going to have to make some more interesting decisions about what we prioritize to spend our gold on for those upgrades, what we prioritize to spend our production on, where we build our units, and where we send them. But the meta discussion I thought would be interesting, I was in the middle of before I interrupted myself, about things that are important in Civilization 6, why it's often a mistake to just have a huge treasury hanging out in your a huge amount of money hanging out in your treasury, is that per turn effects need to happen as soon as possible. And if you can spend gold to get per turn effects, you should do so. And I mentioned example of non-per turn effects being great people, and so it's okay to really take your time on spending gold to recruit great people, or faith to recruit great people. The other thing it's okay to take your time spending gold on, and maybe this is a good justification for why we are not spending a lot of our gold right now, although the fact that we continue to have so much, this is probably a little bit more than we need to hold on to. But upgrading our units. If upgrading your new units is something that you don't need to spend the gold on sooner rather than later, because having a more advanced unit is not a per turn effect. You're not going to be rewarded for having, for example, that crossbowman we mentioned. That archer becoming crossbowman 20 turns earlier or 20 turns later does not matter. In fact, you want it to become a crossbowman as late as possible, but you don't want it to be too late that you have to waste a turn upgrading it on a crucial turn when it should be attacking someone. That's a mistake I often make, so you don't want to wait too long. But waiting longer is better, especially because more advanced units sometimes have higher maintenance costs, and so there's no reason to spend your gold if you know the gold needs to go to upgrading units. There's no reason to spend all of your gold immediately on upgrading units. So it's okay that we're sitting on quite a few thousand in our treasury. I did make the comment that you're up to above 6,000 now. That might be too much to sit on, and we really should be buying something more. Maybe we could go for a wonder. I often neglect the opportunities to build wonders. I don't think we've built a single one this game because they take so long. But if I purchased these buildings, some of these cities that have spent 2 buildings worth of production could have, instead of getting 2 buildings, purchased 2 buildings and then just used those 2 buildings worth of production to get a single wonder. That might have been worth that somewhere in the mid game. So as far as city development optimizations, that's one thing that could have been improved in this run. But it is worth noting that upgrading to battleships can be quite expensive. I don't know if it's 6,000 gold expensive off the top of my head. We'll see, right? We'll actually we're up to more than 7,000 gold. We'll get to see when the time comes. You can see we're getting ready for it, though. Our frigates are moving into Mohenjo-Daro, which is friendly territory, so we're going to be able to upgrade these frigates into battleships in Mohenjo-Daro. And I mentioned this idea of a staging ground. I haven't commented on it yet, but you've gotten to see this frigate just circle around in this area up here, and boom, we're sending a settler over to this new island just north of the Sulu territory. There have not been any enemy settlements made on that city, so if we're the first one to come and claim the city, there are some barbarians, so we'll have to be careful where exactly our settler goes, but the frigate is cleaning them up nice and neatly. That will be another place where we can upgrade our frigates to battleships, potentially, or just send our battleships that have been upgraded back to heal. Now, I know we have Mohenjo-Daro, but we can't produce units in Mohenjo-Daro, so another thing is we can purchase battleships in that new city we settle up there. And so, especially, this land seems pretty fertile. Sometimes it's worth it to settle bad cities just in the tundra or even the snow, just because of proximity reasons for an impending war, particularly an impending naval war where you cannot heal outside of friendly territory. But in this case, it looks like the land will actually be useful. And this actually probably is something, another mistake, another optimization, if we're just talking about development optimizations, is sending a settler over there sooner, maybe buying a settler several turns ago with our huge stockpile of gold. Would have sped up our advantage just a little bit, because that city is not going to be meaningless. Getting a harbor sooner, getting a trade route sooner, those are some of the most important ways that a weak city, even if its production isn't out the wazoo, can still produce one of your most meaningful districts. And in this particular civilization, in this particular game, in this particular map, harbor districts are the clutch district, the gold per turn, just from the intrinsic output adjacency bonus, but as well as the extra trade route. It's going to be a big deal. Also, being on another continent because of all the bonuses that you can get from that one policy card of cities on other continents. Took just a quick glance at the progress towards victory, and no one has really scratched the surface of what it's going to take to determine a victory. I think we're just past turn 210 here. So we're coming into the last third of the game, maybe. So it's good to know that nobody has begun the steps towards an actual victory win condition yet. We are quite far away from one, of course. So if we saw that someone was closing in on the beginning steps of a science victory, I think Sulu may have had maybe not, but I wouldn't be surprised if Sulu had researched rocketry by now. So if they had researched rocketry, we would be sad indeed to know that they had also built a spaceport. But I think we can see that they have not quite researched rocketry. So the fact that we're still dealing with frigates and such is not too terrible of a sign as far as how far behind we are. We're definitely behind, but we might have that room to catch up, especially if we have a nice push with these battleships. We're actually looking at declaring war here very soon. We're going to go ahead and wrap up the episode here. Thank you for watching. We will see how this war turns out for us. Are we going to be able to take Sulu's lead and bring our advantage? Or are we going to fix our errors of loyalty issues and the correct ordering of attacking the enemy cities? We will find out. See you next time.